Is it true, getting into the serious interview, are you sure you have never done this before, side by side, on one television interview that you remember?
No.
How long?
I don't remember ever being on television. But I know I have, but I don't remember the experience.
I've seen some of your stuff. How long you known each other? How many years you known each other?
It's over
60s, in the 60s.
Yeah, the 60s.
And what was the first time you remember being aware of his name or his face, first meeting, ever?
You know, I remember, it's interesting you would ask that, because I remember the first time I saw you, and it was on 14th Street, between Avenue B and C, and I'm not really being funny now.
Yeah, no.
I hope I am, but I'm not trying to be funny, but I hope it comes off funny.
Anything in Alphabet City.
But I did see him on 14th Street. I was with my girlfriend at the time, who was Jill Clayburgh. And she and I were living together on Avenue, and she knew you from Sarah Lawrence, because she did a movie with her, and she said that's really is a very good actor. And he had a kind of real interesting sort of look to him. I thought, geez, he had a lot of presence.
Whatever happened?
Even on 14th Street, he stood out.
Whatever happened to him?
That guy?
Yeah. And when do you first remember being aware of Al?
Well, I was aware of Al. He was doing a play, Tiger Wears a Necktie, and then I remember meeting, that was somewhere around that time, I think, with Jill Clayburgh, who I had done a movie called A Wedding Party when I was 19 with her, with Brian De Palma. It was his first feature, and Jill was the female lead in it, and I was one of the sidekicks of the lead.
And the rest?
That long ago.
He had a lot of energy. I remember that impression. He had a real energy, and kind of, you could tell he had a certain fire in him.
Speaking of energy, in watching the movie, you realize that really your natural habitat is the city of New York. It's kind of hard to envision the two of you guys anywhere else. How, Bob, you can start. How important is it? How much energy do you derive from that comes up through the streets of the city?
Well, New York. It's a great city. I always, you read about where's New York gone the way it was in the 70s or any time, and it always is changing into what it is at the moment, and that's as it should be. And so New York is a great place. It's got the energy. I run into people, I mean, we all know this, but you run into people from other countries, and they just feel it. It's a different experience for them. I kind of get the feeling it's sort of liberating, being from a more constricted environment, in a way, a more, I guess, a smaller town feel, provincial feeling, even in some of the big cities, that there's not the possibility of some real change. And in New York, you feel that when you come, and you can feel it if you're a New Yorker too. That to me is what. And you can also be anonymous at the same time. So there's a tremendous spectrum or spread of experiences.
Can you be anonymous?
Well, I'm not. I'm talking about even. I can in my way, but one.
Well,
can,
I don't recognize
normally,
Bob. Sometimes
you can be anonymous.
He wears those glasses and that hat. And I say, where is he? And I'm here.
You're spending a lot of time in Los Angeles. As a New Yorker, when I visit other cities and the sidewalk gets crowded, I hop into the street, and everyone stares at me like I'm going to get hit by a car.
Yeah.
And there's certain things, New York stuff, that doesn't translate to other places. Are you finding that?
Well, we were both born here. You were born here, right? Yeah. I was born in Manhattan. And what Bob was saying about the provincial aspect of New York City is true, because it is sort of like different worlds, different places, little provinces throughout the city. It's only a 6-mile long island, and the island of Manhattan. And everywhere you go, you can feel a different life, different. It's a feast here. It's great.
Speaking of a feast, there's one scene. You're in your apartment, and you got a nice bowl of pasta, and you put on some old school opera on vinyl on an old stereo.
Yeah.
Anything autobiographical there? Anything from your own life there?
The opera?
Any of it?
Well, the pasta.
It looked good. It looked like a nice little set piece.
Yeah. And as far as New York being and Los Angeles, what I find myself doing in Los Angeles, my children live in Los Angeles with my ex, and I see them a lot, so I'm there, and that's really the main reason I'm in Los Angeles. But I find myself going out in the still suburb I live in as much as I can on the porch, because I get to watch cars go by my street, and occasionally a dog goes by. But I get a sense of people. That
vitality.
Every half hour, a person walk by.
It makes you feel like home.
I wave and I say. It gives me it's my when you're homesick, you just go out on a porch and wait for somebody to walk by.
A little taste in New York.
That's got to be the start of a poem I'm composing. I'm sure.
Yes, a lot of poetry in the movie, so you're probably thinking of poetry. That's a segue. I have to ask this because this will air tomorrow, and we all know what day it is. And Bob, especially all you've done to help the city, especially with the film festival. How often do you get frustrated at, let's call it, the lack of progress since 9/11 downtown?
Well, I don't know. I mean, all the intricacies of everything. It is surprising that it's taken this long to get to a point, to get to where we are today. So I'm surprised. That's all I can say.
What does the day mean to you?
Well, it's like I always say. It was so unreal, and then real that there's no describing it, explaining it. It's and I have not lost anybody in the Trade Center. So when you go through that, that's a whole other thing. And all you can do is, empathize for what those people are feeling, what everybody's feeling who's lost somebody. What can you say?
Al, any thoughts on 9/11? Kind of hit us all.
Oh no, just to echo what Bobby said. Also, it's vivid in my mind, and I was here on the 10th of September, and I left for Los Angeles, and I was on a plane on the 10th of September, and we were on the tarmac for about 4 hours, take off, and I wanted to get off the plane and come back to New York, just to do it another day. I got home and I heard about it on the 11th. I first thought that it was somebody got it wrong, and then I really wanted to come back, and I couldn't get back here because there was no because you feel the need to be here when it happened. Yeah.
To reconnect. Speaking of reconnecting, about the movie, prior to this, those of us who are fans had the one scene in the movie Heat, just a crackling electric exchange of dialogue seated at that table. Well, now we have an entire movie of it. There's a scene in a bar restaurant, Montero's, where you guys are kind of kicking back, and you can tell there's dialogue planned for the scene, but you can also tell these are two guys talking. How often do you see each other normally? How much of a rekindling of her friendship had to happen on a movie set?
Well, we've known each other a long time. We're comfortable with each other, so I think those things help with us just being able to do the scene, and maybe whatever other things come out, that even if how subtle or subliminal almost they are. They have some. They're there. So.
It's sort of what you, I guess, what you want to have in a relationship when you're acting with someone is a kind of you communicate in a way that through years and years of doing it anyway, and then knowing each other, there's a mutual trust there of some sort. I wish I could find another word other than trust, but you're comfortable with each other, and what you're really trying to do is take the acting goes out of the scene, and rather you just sort of be with each other, kind of thing. It's as close as I can come to describing it.
Well, is it like that team-building exercise where you fall backwards, and if it works right, you fall into somebody's arms, and the message is they have your back?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, you feel covered in a way, but you don't even think about it, actually, right, Bob? You don't think about it.
And also, John Avnet was he's very supportive of actors and really loves actors, so loves the process and so on, and that's a very essential ingredient in all of this.
He sets the tone and the environment of it, so you could just kind of walk into it.
How do you like playing cops? It's a change. It's a switch. Yeah. You've played cops on and off. You've killed people, both of you. Let's admit it. Let's get it out.
I like to play people.
Which is good.
That's a pretentious way of saying.
Most of your roles, conveniently, have
people.
been.
They are humans. I haven't gotten to the Martian thing yet, the alien thing, but we're working on it.
And you've been a thug. You've been a fucker. What?
Was that acceptable the way you just said it?
See that?
You just on the line.
Don't give me that face, because now I think I'm going to get killed. And speaking of that face you just gave me, you both have this weapon you can use as actors. Do you ever give that dead-eye look to a poor person who pulls you over or a waitress? Because you could just reduce somebody to tears. You could cause terrible things to happen with that little dead-eye look you just gave me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can't do that to my kids.
No, I wouldn't.
They wouldn't
recommend it.
They wouldn't care.
Oh, it wouldn't work at home, you're saying?
No.
Okay. But you can use that as a weapon, you know that. Do you ever just throw it on somebody on the street just for fun?
Well, you sort of don't need to sometimes because it comes with the territory. I was driving, and I drove past this guy's parked car, and I knocked his rear view mirror off. Totally my fault, of course. So I stopped, naturally. I said, "What? Wow, I'm so sorry." He says, "Look at my mirror. What did you do?" I said, "Well, whatever. I'll take care of it. Whatever." I rolled down my window. He came to the window, saw it was me, and he said, "No, it's all right.
He
Don't
surrendered.
worry.
Yeah.
It's fine." I said, "What do you mean it's fine?" I said, "Your mirror's off." "No, please, here's the..." And, of course, it takes a while before you realize you are you.
Right.
You're walking around, you're not thinking that you're you, or whatever people think you are. You think you're you. You don't think you are what they think you are.
Yeah. Totally.
And then you find out.
But he surrendered. You had him.
I had him, and then I was offering money. I offered him my scarf. I offered him my driver's license. I offered him everything. I offered him the car. Finally. No, I did beg him to give me take my number, and it worked out.
Do fans come up doing you guys? Do you get that a lot? Do you get people doing you because they want?
You talking to me?
I get it, because
do you have a lot of that?
Not much. Sometimes people will do it, but not as much as you would think.
I do it a lot to him.
Yeah, he does it.
Yeah. Well, that's important. Keep him honest.
He had a lot of presence.
Whatever happened?
Even on 14th Street, he stood out.
Whatever happened to him?
That guy?
Yeah. And when do you first remember being aware of Al?
Well, I was aware of Al. He was doing a play, Tiger Wears a Necktie, and then I over
60s, in the 60s.
Yeah, the 60s.
And what was the first time you remember being aware of his name or his face, first meeting, ever?
You know, I remember, it's interesting you would ask that, because I remember the first time I saw you.
Is it true, getting into the serious interview, are you sure you have never done this before, side by side, on one television interview, that you remember?
No.
How long?
I don't remember ever being on television.
You
but
have.
I know I have,
I've seen
but I
some
don't
of
remember the experience.
I've seen some of your stuff. How long you known each other? How many years you known each other?
And it was on 14th Street, between Avenue B and C. And I'm not really being funny now.
Yeah.
I hope I am, but I'm not trying to be funny. But I hope it comes off funny.
Anything in Alphabet City.
But I did see him on 14th Street. I was with my girlfriend at the time, who was Jill Clayburgh.
Oh, yeah.
And she and I were living together on Avenue, and she knew you from Sarah Lawrence, because she did a movie with her, and she said that's really is a very good actor. And he had a kind of real interesting sort of look to him. Yeah, I thought, geez.